It always seems to be the sort of people who can't afford to lose money that are the ones that end up doing so. I want to share what happened to me. I wanted to follow a dream and start a brand new life on the other side of the world. It's very difficult at the moment in countries like England, where salaries have not kept pace with house prices and inflation. Like millions of other people, I was working a dead-end job, and all I was getting from that was the ability to pay monthly bills. There was nothing left over for me to save for the future or get on the property ladder. To me, that felt like I was just wasting my life. What's the point in getting up early in the morning, driving a long way to work, paying for all the petrol that your car uses at the same time, arrive at work, sit there all day, drive home again, and end up too tired to spend time with anybody and just go to bed? Then at the end of the month, you look at your bank and see your salary has been deposited, only to then use all the money to pay your rent, bills, and daily essentials. That's not how life was meant to be in the West, yet that's what it had become for too many people. I was one of them. That's what I was doing. But it was an accidental trip to Thailand that opened my eyes to how other people lived, and it made me realize that I could do the same. That's all I wanted to do. But I want to explain to anyone who might be thinking about doing something similar that it is not just as easy as that. Not everybody is cut out for life in a different country. Remote work that is very unpredictable, and the unfortunate state of having to find yourself being scammed by someone promising the world. I'm not talking about a girl scamming me out of money, but what I am talking about is a money-making scheme that I got involved with that cost me not only money I couldn't afford to lose, but also my belief in other people, and it completely shattered my dreams for the future. Please don't be like me. It's most definitely not worth it, and I would say that again. If you want to escape everything that's going wrong in your home country, what I would say is, get your money where you are and then escape, although I know how difficult it is because I wasn't able to do that. So, what do? I was 42 when a friend of mine said he was going to visit Thailand. He had been travelling to Thailand for a few years, and that was the time he was going to get married to his girlfriend, and he asked me to go along for some moral support. He said that none of his family were going to go, and none of his other friends were going to go, so I would be the only person from his side who would go to his wedding. He also talked about Thailand and how he hoped to live there one day, but it was his plan after he got married to take his new wife back to England with him and work there until they had enough money to move to Thailand full time. That's always amazed me. People thinking that they don't want to be where they are, yet they remain where they don't want to be because they think that's the right thing to do. He didn't want to live in England with his wife. He wanted to live in Thailand, and that got me thinking there must be something about Thailand that really was special. Something about Thailand that made people want to be there as opposed to where they came from. So I was looking forward to going to see that. I was also able to go because I'd just come out of a long-term relationship. I was with my ex for 9 years, but we were just drifting apart. We never got to spend much time together because I would work and she would work, and then we'd get home and we'd be too tired to do anything together. I think that's the case for too many people. And at 42, you start to think there must be more to life than just surviving. I want to paint my version of Thailand for you so that you can start to understand why I did what I did. I find it's all very well and good to say I went to Thailand and I did this and this happened to me. I hear it all the time, but there is usually a story behind it, and I try to be as clear as I can because I listen to other guys' stories all the time. I must admit that I am a bit addicted to your channel, so I hope you don't mind that. But you hear their stories and they talk about the things that happened to them, and while some of them talk about Thailand and their feelings of Thailand, others tell you what happened to them without giving you the overall picture of why they got themselves into that position to start with. I genuinely believe that this is because Thailand has a unique aspect to it that draws a certain type of person in. It's not just a guy who falls in love with a girl and does some stupid things like you hear all the time. There is a lot more to it than that, It's a whole picture that you need to think about when you're listening to these stories. I personally feel I understand what people are talking about, but some people don't. So I want to give you a rundown of my first Thailand impressions and how, over the course of my time in Thailand, my mind changed and shifted to become something that it never was. I hope I get that across how I want it to, so please bear with me. The first time in Thailand, and the first time Thailand started to excite me, was when we were both in the airport just about to get on the plane. My friend was speaking to his girlfriend, and she was at her home village getting ready for the wedding. She was showing my friend all the different things that were happening. They had a stage and lots of speakers because there was going to be a band. They had about 40 plastic blue-coloured tables, each with 6 blue chairs around them. I bet you can picture exactly what I mean here. Very basic furniture, rented from a local provider whose job it was to rent out furniture for people doing weddings. Aside from that, there were lots of people walking around what appeared to be a central wooden table. People getting really large pots and pans ready to cook in a day or two's time. And everyone seems to be chipping in and doing things together. The reason this is important as my first introduction to Thailand is that everybody was doing things together as a community. People from the local village were gathering around and, doing things together. There was no one person who seemed to be the boss or in charge and telling other people to toe the line. It felt like a great sense of community that seemed to have disappeared from where we came from. My friend hung up the phone with her and turns to me and asks me if he thinks I'm doing the right thing. It's very different to how we do things here, he laughed, with a slight look of concern on his face, like I thought he must be wrong in his head. I didn't see it that way. I thought what he was doing was incredibly brave and incredibly exciting, and I did envy him in that moment, as somebody who really seemed to have reached out and tried to make his life what he wanted it to be. Never mind that he couldn't find what he wanted in England, he was going to do that in Thailand. So I felt very proud of him. That was how I felt as we stood up and walked down the gangway onto the plane. We were flying on Thai Airways, and I would later learn that the reception that the air hostesses gave you when you get onto the plane was the epitome of how people in Thailand actually were. As everyone says, they're so friendly and kind and happy, and I have nothing bad to say about anything that happened to me in Thailand that was Thai person related. But you would wonder if these people meant what they were doing, or if they were doing what was expected of them. You always had that thought that when you sat down on the plane and the plane takes off through the rain and the cloud level into the amazing blue sky above, you do think to yourself, what am I going to discover when I get there? That was the most fun flight I'd ever been on. Although it is a long way and the seats are not that comfortable after 11.5 hours, it really is a very different experience to fly to a place closer to home. I think the longest flight I'd been on before was only 2.5 hours, so 11.5 hours was a very different experience for somebody like me. I bet there are guys listening to this who did long-haul flights all the time, and it's completely normal. But you have to think, for someone like me, this was a really unique and exciting experience that I still cherish to this day. I had quite a few small bottles of red wine on the flight, as did my friend, and we arrived in Bangkok a little bit drunk. Luckily, we're not too drunk to appear as being drunk, so we successfully navigated our way through the airport. I don't know if anybody else has been anywhere with a friend who has been to that place lots of times before, but my friend felt so good to be able to show me how to do everything when you get to Thailand. As if to say, without my help, you're going to not get anywhere. You're not going to be able to do anything without me. He didn't mean that in a negative way. It's sort of just one of those things that felt like he wanted to show me. And kind of like he expected me to be curled up in a ball just outside the aeroplane because I was so alarmed about how different everything was. I know that it's an exaggeration and it's only meant as a bit of a joke, but it's one of those things like so many people. They arrive in Thailand by themselves every single day for the first time, and they manage to do everything without any problems. So why my friend thought I needed this hand-holding, I don't know. But I was okay with letting him feel like, he was the Thailand expert he thought he was. My friend's girlfriend hadn't come to Bangkok. I bet I'm one of the only guys whose first time in Thailand and his first experience of seeing Bangkok was driving from one airport to the other, where we got a flight immediately up to Khon Kaen, which is where his girlfriend was from. I was going to be spending time in Bangkok and a few other places later in my holiday. I also had plans to think about Thailand on a bigger picture, and I was there for around a month or just under. I wasn't going to be spending all my time with my friend, just a few days up in Khon Kaen, and then my friend could go on his honeymoon. He was going to Singapore. From then, I would be able to start exploring Thailand on my own. If you ever find yourself in a position where a friend asks you to do something like that, as long as they're a close friend, I would say jump at the opportunity, even if you feel like you might be a bit uncomfortable by going to something and somewhere so different. But it would definitely open your eyes to the world and all the possibilities out there. I found Thailand amazing, and even on the taxi ride from Suvarnabhumi to Don Muang, it was the best place I'd ever been. When we got to Don Muang Airport, we were flying on Air Asia. I was expecting a similar experience to something like EasyJet from back at home, but what I found, it was far better, a far superior experience for a similar price. I don't understand why people have negative ideas about countries such as Thailand. Countries in Asia, they do many things so much better than we do them, a lot more modern and up to date, and I think that's what many people don't understand. The reason I'm telling you all of this is because the more I'm seeing of Thailand, the more I'm falling in love with it. Even though this is only the first day, and even though all I've done is go from one airport to the other, that's how I'm feeling. Thailand made me feel alive in a way I never felt before, and it's the little things that all add up together to make you feel like this. It was only an hour to Khon Kaen. That was the most turbulent flight I'd ever been on. Of course, it's no fault of the pilot or the airline, but I'd never been on a plane that bounced as much as that. I wasn't afraid, and it was quite an amusement experience for me, but my friend is panicking like mad. You could hear other people screaming as well. It was a bit of a harrowing experience, but I don't think it's normal. It was just a bit of an unlucky trip. The flight returning to Bangkok was smooth. His girlfriend was there to meet him at the airport, and I stood back a bit and let them spend time together, but she seemed happy to see him. This was only the second time he had seen her for a very long time, and I am happy to report that as of now at least, they are living together in England and are expecting their first child. Just trying to remove the notion that all girls are there to scam you. Perhaps most are, but his girl, at least yet, doesn't seem to be trying to scam him. We went to a hotel next, and I was ready to pass out. But on the way to the hotel, I was really shocked at what Khon Kaen was like. I was expecting a small, backward little town in rural Thailand, yet it was the exact opposite. A huge modern city with malls and a few high-rise buildings, and the hotel we stayed at was probably the best hotel I'd stayed in before, and it was only £45 a night. I guess we got there at 7 p.m. into the hotel, and that was it for me until the following day. And so far, everything I'd seen about Thailand, everything I felt and the interactions I had, everything made me feel excited and alive for the first time in a long time. Thailand excited me like I never thought a country could, and I couldn't wait to spend the coming days and weeks getting to know the country even better. One thing I wasn't expecting was to fall in love with the country so much more than I thought possible. The next day, I met my friend and his girlfriend for breakfast in the hotel downstairs. It was an incredible buffet breakfast in the hotel, so different to anything I'd had at hotels in the past. I thought it was quite funny that they had a bowl of rice porridge and people were eating that for breakfast, savoury dishes that didn't look anything like breakfast. Again, the little things like that make you understand just how different the place that you are is. To me, a buffet breakfast was cereals, fruits, cheeses, bacon, eggs, sausages, the typical things. But in Thailand, you're seeing noodles and even a curry as part of the breakfast, and I don't know why little things like that made me feel excited. But they did, and I have to tell you like it is. Maybe I'm just hoping to have some form of sympathy come my way, because you will understand that what I did because of a deep-seated love of Thailand and a desire to be there. After breakfast, we went to the village. The wedding was planned for the following day, so this was going to be the first time I would see what was going on. When we were on the way, that was when my friend told me that he'd never even been to his wife's village before. I just thought he'd been lots of times, but this was the first time he was going to be seeing her family. They'd been together and been speaking for quite a few years, long before COVID, so the family knew about him and he'd been introduced on the phone a few times, translated through his girlfriend. My friend was 41 and his girlfriend was 33, and she used to be a nurse. She didn't have any children, and I felt like he found himself a good one, which today still seems to be the case, but you never know what's going to happen, do you? But as soon as you leave the city, you start getting a lot more rural a lot quicker, and you get very different feelings in the countryside as you do in the city. Someone from England like me, you might go to London, then you might go to a really nice countryside setting, and while the look and feel of the place is very different, the quality of the buildings, for example, is pretty much the same. That is very different in Thailand. It's not like that city versus countryside. Quality and everything like that deteriorates the further away you go from a city. I've never heard someone talk about that before. And there is a big difference between how things are in Thailand compared to England in that sense. His girlfriend's house was 20 minutes away from the hotel we were staying at. She was the one driving us there. She had an old pickup that belonged to her dad that she was borrowing. When we got there, it was a hive of activity. They'd already started cooking food for the day after. That shocked me, the way they were very lackadaisical when it came to food hygiene. But I suppose that's what they're used to, even though I wasn't. I'm just keeping myself to myself, standing back, let everybody get on and greet each other and get themselves acquainted. My friend is doing everything how you'd expect him to do. A deep why and bow to her family. Everything is very Thai and he's trying his best to fit in. We spent about 5 hours there just looking around the village. I didn't really want to get in the way, so I went for a walk around the village by myself. My second day in Thailand, and I'm walking around a small village, and it was really an amazing experience. One guy still sticks in my mind. I think he was already a little bit drunk, and he calls me over and puts some of that clear liquid out of a brown bottle into a small glass, and he hands it to me. I would later learn that that was Lao Khao, the famous rice whiskey, and it doesn't taste very good. But that happened more than once. On one occasion, someone welcomed me for a beer. People welcome you into their homes, offering you things, not expecting anything in return. These people are fantastic. Again, I need to mention this because although what I saw in front of me in this village was so different to anything I'd seen before, I was fully aware that they did things differently. And you hear stories, I've heard lots of stories on your channel, guys going to villages, and I can understand why so many of them struggle. I was having a fantastic time, but the thought of spending any more than maybe 2 or at the most 3 days there would be more than enough. We left back to the hotel, and everything was ready for the day after. I went out myself that evening, and I'm just finding that the country of Thailand is more and more like I hoped it would be. I don't understand why anybody has anything negative to say about Thailand. I was there in Khon Kaen, walking around, and around 11 p.m, and I'd never felt as safe in my life walking around. You might walk past somebody coming in the other direction, and they'd smile at you. You might walk past a little shop and a few guys drinking outside, and all you hear is an almighty shout, and they'd be smiling and beckoning you over to go and sit with them. I don't know why that doesn't happen in the tourist areas. Well, I suppose it's pretty obvious, but in non-tourist areas, you're going to be there with some of the best people you'll ever see, and what a night I had. Got a little bit drunk, which gave me a hangover the following day, so I had to pretend like I was absolutely fine when we went back to the village, and we'd already be about 150 people there. My friend was the one who paid for the whole wedding. I think he said it was about £4,000. He also gave some money to his girlfriend's family, and I do understand why some guys don't want to do that. But I suppose he just had to put up with it, but I knew how much he didn't want to give any money. The wedding was a very interesting experience, as everything else was. I saw a lot of things that I would never have thought possible. But in the time, it was what it was, and I was enjoying being there. People dancing, getting drunk, and doing all kinds of things that I'd never seen before, but I was happy to leave because, for me at least, I think any time in the village longer than that would have probably sent me insane. The following day, I flew back to Bangkok myself, and over the course of the next 3 weeks and a bit, I went from falling in love with the country of Thailand to wanting nothing more than to spend the rest of my life in the country of Thailand. Bangkok was the best city I'd ever been to. I stayed close to the Chao Phraya River and spent time walking around there. I also went to Phuket and stayed in a great hotel. And I'm not someone who thinks and wants to go to the bars and do things like that, although I did enjoy them from time to time. But to me, what I liked about Thailand just was how different it was and how it made you feel excited about life again, which you'd never felt for such a long time. When I arrived home and got back to work, everything started to feel like it did before I went to Thailand. That endless existence just to survive. Thailand had opened up a part of me that I didn't know existed, and I needed to be there. Before I went to Thailand, I knew that my existence in England was nothing close to what I ever thought my life would be like, but I didn't know what to do about it or how to escape. Yet I knew that in Thailand I could have a better life for less money and not feel like I was just working to survive. I didn't just go to Thailand one day and think, oh, I'm going to stay here. It was that huge mind shift. I became a different person after I went to Thailand. It was because of these experiences that I had, and I need to talk about these so that you actually understand why I did what I did. But at this point, I find myself going to work every day, not wanting to be there anymore. I'm trying to find something to do that could see me getting back to Thailand. That's when I started following people online who talked about how they moved to Thailand, how they worked online, and how they were able to earn sometimes Western salaries or more in Thailand. And they talked about how it changed their lives and how they were so much happier because they took the risk and they made it work. There was so much talk about digital nomads. I didn't really know what to make of that term. I thought a digital nomad was someone who did something that was very technologically advanced, like someone who coded a very difficult website or someone who made a fancy mobile application. That's what I thought a digital nomad was. But as soon as you start looking at what people do to be able to work in a different country, people do all kinds of things. I've heard other people talk about it too. People who answer customer service calls. As long as they are native English speakers, from England for example, it was quite easy to get a job doing something like that. The problem with that was, it would still be doing something I didn't want to do. Whereas, when I came across someone who was talking about how they made money to live in Thailand and they did gambling arbitrage, this was when my interest really started to peak. That was what I thought moving to Thailand meant. Going there and doing something that wasn't a 9-to-5 job. I was very surprised to understand that people went to Thailand and did 9-to-5 jobs remotely. Yet, they would be doing this from late afternoon to midnight. To me, that felt like the very cruel thing to do. You were where you wanted to be, but you're still doing something you don't want to do. So I tried to stay away from that and guys saying that they did that because I felt like that was sort of defeating the purpose of actually going in the first place. You will see it on YouTube even today. Type in gambling arbitrage, and there were so many videos of people telling you how to do it. I became convinced that that was how I was going to be able to stay in Thailand. As I've already said, I was 42, hated my job. I worked in a bank, but I wasn't one of these guys who made a lot of money. I just worked in a local branch, typical high street bank. I wasn't paid a lot of money, and it wasn't something I wanted to continue doing. I'd been back home for around a month, and I'd been exploring everything about Thailand and moving to Thailand, and what people did when they were there. There were always stories of people doing such interesting and exciting things, able to make a living in Thailand at the same time. You'd see one guy who made money from Instagram and someone else who did a normal 9-to-5 but enjoyed it because he was in Thailand, and successful forex traders, all showing their stories and how they made their way to Thailand and how Thailand had changed their lives for the better. It was when I saw the guy, though, talking about gambling arbitrage that I was excited to do the same thing. Gambling arbitrage sounded like it was just up my street, and I started watching this guy on his YouTube channel, and he was talking about how he did it, what his system was, and he would always show how much money he made. It was amazing to see. Sometimes he made £1,000 in a single day. Then he'd have a few days off, and then he'd make 500 the day after. Watching his content became more important to me than anything, because I was learning through every video he posted about how to do things. I opened my first 3 accounts and deposited some money ready to make my first bets. But I wasn't ready to start betting straight away. I still felt like I was missing a piece of the puzzle that would connect everything together. I'm seeing what this guy is doing, seeing him making money, and he's posting real screenshots of his accounts. Yet there seemed to be something that needed to connect all this together. And the guy sold a course, telling people the real secrets behind gambling arbitrage. And if you took his course and paid him a monthly subscription, he would always be on hand to have a real in-person one-on-one call over video to help anytime I needed help. The first time he went live and he was placing bets across multiple accounts, and when the results came in and it seemed like he'd made £800, I knew that is what I wanted to do. That same day I paid £7,500 for his course. I felt like it was a lot of money, and that was a lot of savings I had, but I did have the deposits I put in my accounts which totaled £5,000, and I could raise about £10,000 more by selling my car. That £10,000 was what I expected to dip into when I started living permanently in Thailand. As soon as I bought the course, I got an email full of information. It was written out in order, and about an hour later, I actually received a call from the guy himself. He welcomed me to what he called his family, said he can't wait for me to start living my dream, and he can't wait to help me get there. He told me not to expect immediate success because it takes time to get used to things and to spot the right opportunities. But once I got to know that, he said, then I had a ticket to print money. I was getting really excited when I was speaking to him, and when I put the phone down, I felt goosebumps, and I couldn't stay still. I was so happy that I found what I thought was right and something that could get me to Thailand. From everything I've said, you know exactly why I wanted to be in Thailand. I fell in love with the country, and that's where I wanted to be. Not only that, though, I could have a better life there while not having to work a job. I could spend less money, therefore I could save more money. It was like the best of both worlds, and I spent the next week every evening reading through the course, and it contained a lot of great information, I thought, so it was a great benefit. When I told my friend I was going to be moving to Thailand, he was really jealous. He asked me how I was going to move there, and I just said I found something to do online. I should be able to make quite decent money, and it's not full-time work either, so I can enjoy what Thailand is all about. He sounded interested, and can you tell me what you're going to do, and maybe I could do it as well. So I told him I'm going to be doing gambling arbitrage. I found a guy who knows how to do it, and I've taken his course, and he's on call anytime I need help. When I told my friend that, I was expecting him to say, sign me up. I'm not paying for his course, but you can share what you have with me, and I would have gladly let him read through the course and see if he liked it. But he just looked at me and said, are you sure that's going to work? And I could understand why he was skeptical, but he hadn't seen what I had seen yet. I just said I am sure, and I understand how it sounds, but what I found is real, and I've seen this guy placing bets live, and where all the bets come in, he ends up with a profit. It's a difficult system you've got to work out. It's not just a question of placing bets and hoping you win. There's a lot behind it. So, I said, it's quite difficult, but if you want to do it, let me know. He just said, if you're sure, just be careful and I hope it works out, and that was it. He was a great friend, my best friend, but he wasn't someone who was going to try to tell me what or what not to do. If I had my mind set on doing something, I would do it. Just like if he told me he was going to move to Thailand tomorrow and he's going to work throughout the night making multiple sales calls for an English company and he's going to be paid £800 a month, saying that's enough money, I can't wait to do it. If he said that to me, I might have thought that's a stupid idea. You're going to be sacrificing your whole night for a tiny amount of money, and you can't do what you went to Thailand for doing in the first place because that's not enough money. But I would never have said that to him, so I kind of feel like it's the same thing. As soon as I read the course, I did feel like there was a lot of information in there that he didn't share on his channel. How to spot opportunities, how to keep under the radar, how not to get your accounts locked. There was an awful lot to it. And I can remember doing my first series of bets. I was using everything I'd learned in the course, and when the series of bets I placed came up good and I made £100, and then I repeated it and made £200, that was everything I needed for me to quit my job and go to Thailand. I know, it was probably too soon. You were successful twice, so that means it's going to work permanently, but I was so convinced it was going to work, and when it worked twice, because my mind thought it was going to come off good, it wasn't a shock when it did. That made my mind was already made up. I wasn't able to make as much because I didn't have as much money on deposit as that guy, but I would only need to make 10 series of bets every month, and if I could make between £100 and £200 a time on each one, that would be enough. That would be an awful lot of work looking for the right opportunities, so it wasn't just like he could place bets and that was it. There would be hours, sometimes even days, looking for the right opportunity, so I knew there was a lot of work that I needed to do, but I was aware of that and I was happy to do it. The day I handed in my notice at work was the best day of my life. It kind of felt like I imagined it would feel to be released from jail after serving a 20-year sentence for a crime you didn't commit. That's how I felt, the sense that my job cannot hold my salary over me anymore, and I was free from the shackles that they had tightly wrapped around me. I went to sell my car. My car was my most prized possession. I really loved it. It was a Nissan 350Z, but in a way, I kind of loved my car even more when I was able to sell it, because that money would take me to Thailand. That would be able to keep me in Thailand while I was developing and honing my skills as a professional gambler. The day I flew to Thailand as a brand new digital nomad, as somebody who had dreamed to make that moment ever since I went before, I finally started to feel like my life was moving in the direction I wanted it to. It took a lot of courage to do that. I think many people don't understand. The guys that move to Thailand, regardless of their circumstances or regardless of what they're doing, it takes courage. You can't just go and if you're not courageous or not brave enough to try. I know many people would love to have a go at doing something like that, but they're too scared. They see people failing and they think that they might fail and they have unrealistic ideas and I don't know. For me, it's better to try and fail than not try at all. It wasn't until I checked into the hotel and dropped off my bag and walked onto the street on my way to a little local Thai restaurant that I went on my last time to Bangkok that I understood the gravity of what I'd done. I'd just quit my job, I sold my car, and I was going to become a professional gambler. Yet in that moment, I wasn't full of panic or worry. I was full of excitement and adrenaline because although I knew there was an awful lot of work to do, and there was always a small chance that things might not work, if they did, my life would have changed for the better. As I said, it's better to try and fail than not try at all, and I was happy that I was trying. But deep down, I knew things were going to be successful. That's the thing. I was so sure things were going to be successful that I didn't even worry. I gave myself a week to acclimatise to being back in Thailand, and after that I rented a small place on a 6-month lease. I got the internet sorted out. I went to the shop and they came the following day and it was already installed. Incredible service. Why aren't things like that at home? After a week, I found myself waking up one morning and thinking it's time. Let's get to work. Let's start making a bit of money. And after you've made £1,000, you can go and treat yourself to a weekend at the beach. That was what the plan was, so I opened up my laptop, opened the accounts, and brought up the course and read through some things and I started looking for opportunities. For anyone who's not looked at gambling arbitrage before, by opportunities I was meaning the different way bets were priced on different platforms. Often you need to take advantage of them quickly, and it was because of that that you would make money. They didn't come up all the time, and I've already said, but you had to be ready when they did. I was scouring 3 different accounts for about 3 hours when I thought I saw a great opportunity. It was betting on the outcome of an Australian rules football game. Everything seemed right and I put on some bets and I waited for them to come through. The worst possible result happened for me on that one, but that only meant that I broke even. Again, I'm getting more confidence to the fact that this is actually going to work. A few hours later, I'm getting a bit restless. I'm wanting to make a successful bet and call it a day, but I'm not finding one. But I didn't get upset about that because I'd read and knew that that could be the case. But a few hours later, I thought I saw another great opportunity and I placed 3 large bets across the accounts, which should have meant I would have come out on top, or at worst, break even. But when all the bets came through and I'd lost £500, I was unsure what had happened. I started to get upset that I'd made a mistake. I did the calculations beforehand and I had it down on a piece of paper in front of me what I'd worked out. Yet, when I went to look at the bets that I'd written down, it was different. It appeared I'd missed out on the fact that the account I was going to take advantage of had changed the odds and I didn't notice. That was a real annoyance, but that seemed to be the case. But to be sure, I even called the guy. I was able to speak to him all the time because I bought his course and I paid him £150 a month, but it felt good to be able to speak to him when I needed to. I told him what had happened, and it was just said, "You're going to have losers from time to time. You've got to get away with that. You're going to always lose sometimes, but the idea is to make more than you lose." That was the first time I'd ever heard him say that. I asked him, "What do you mean by lose?" I was under the impression that as long as we found the right bets, we couldn't lose. Then he said, "No, it doesn't work like that. Of course you can lose. But the odds should be in your favour, so the more often than not, the longer you do things, you should come out on top." Nowhere in his course did he mention that you could lose. I wasn't prepared to lose anything. I thought this was a guaranteed thing. That's what I'd spoken to him about before, yet I wish I'd recorded when I'd spoken to him so I could play it back. But now he's saying, "Of course you can lose. Just make sure that the odds are in your favour and eventually you'll come out on top. It only needs to be 51% to 49% in your favour and eventually you'll make money." He then wished me good luck and said I could call him any time. That was an upsetting day. The first time when I was going to be making money and I'd lost £500. And not only that, the guy is now telling me something he didn't before. I didn't have enough money to be able to have multiple losses for everything to come good eventually. But I did think, okay, I made a bit of a mistake on the odds on the last bet, so I won't make that mistake again and hopefully tomorrow we can get some money back. I went to bed that night and all the excitement sort of waned away, yet I still had the overwhelming feeling that I was moving in the right direction, and before long I would be a very successful professional gambler. You might be listening to that thinking I'm sounding like a fool, but I had convinced myself that this was real, that there was no way it wasn't going to work. I'd seen it work for the other guy, he's speaking to me, and he's still making videos, and he's going live, showing himself making money, so what more proof did I need? The next day I woke up buzzing and pumping and ready to prove to myself that everything can work, and I spent 2 hours looking for a good opportunity. I thought I found one and I was so sure I put 3 really large bets on and waited for them to come through. It was a very tense 1 hour while I watched that. I was betting on the outcome of another Australian rules football game, and when I noticed that it had come through and I'd made £1,000, that was everything perfect for me. Everything came together, and I thought, not only did I make money back from yesterday, I'm £500 up. So I just took stock and relaxed, and I decided to treat myself to going to the beach for a few days, which I did. I'd heard many people talking about Koh Samet, an island close to Bangkok, so I went there and had a great time. The beaches and the restaurants and the ocean, perfect. Only 2 hours from Bangkok, and I'm thinking, my successful bet has paid for this. And I could do this all the time. I was really happy. It was the first time I actually met a girl who was Thai that I liked. Didn't go very far with her, but I was starting to feel that I wanted to have a girlfriend eventually, but that was going to come later. I returned home on the Monday. I hadn't looked at any electronic device since then, and I opened up 3 of my accounts. But I found one of them had been suspended. My heart sank. I didn't know what had happened, and when I reached out to the support, they just said I was doing something against the terms and conditions of the site, but how was I doing that? I was just placing bets. I spoke to the customer service over the phone, and they said the same thing. Your account was showing signs of doing something against our terms of service. I just said I was placing bets, and they said, sorry, that's how it is, and can't do anything about it. I couldn't believe that. I was extremely annoyed, but as you probably know, there are lots of companies, so I signed up to a few more sites. I spoke to the guy again. I told him what had happened, and he said there is a big part of the course about that. Have you read it? I did. Yes, I have read it, but I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. He told me to just go back and read it again, and then he said, if you have another account that gets suspended, that's because you're not doing it properly and you haven't followed the instructions correctly. Make sure you follow the instructions precisely, and then it shouldn't be shut down. If it does get shut down, it means you didn't do it properly. That was the first time him trying to shift blame away from himself and put it on me. It didn't feel like that at the time, and I just said I would be more careful next time. But I think that's what he was doing, really. Just saying to me, if another account gets suspended, it's your fault. It took 2 days for the other account that I opened to become verified. Before I left, I made sure to have all the correct documents, the proof of address and copy of ID to hand, so I could send it if I ever needed another account. So I was prepared for that. yet I wasn't prepared to have one shut down so quickly, or at all. But when that account was now open, I started looking for opportunities again. I didn't find any for 2 days, but then I did find one, or I thought I did, and I placed a few big bets. Yet for some reason it came back and I lost £500. The worst case scenario happened, which was losing £500. That was only a 40% chance. The second best was making £600. That was 45%, and the best case was making £1,000, which is only 15% likely. So I thought, well, I've lost 500, so I was just unlucky. But then I made 1,000 on the next one. Then I woke up in the morning and 2 of my accounts had been suspended again, and I called the guy back and told him. All he said was, I told you, if your account gets suspended, it means you haven't done it properly. You have to do it properly. And then I sort of say to him, how do I do it properly? I'm following your instructions precisely and it's not working. And he said, obviously you didn't. Then I start to get angry saying, I'm meant to be making money from this so I can live in Thailand. Now you're telling me all these things you didn't tell me before. Then he said, if I raise my voice again, he's going to cancel my subscription. Okay, I found out then he was just a charlatan. Couldn't believe it. I tried to open more accounts and I made bits and lost bits, but anytime I did something that was good, an account would be suspended. So I probably lost £5,000 trying to become a professional gambler. I thought I was going to be one. I had convinced myself I was, and I was so sure that it was what I was going to be, that if someone had told me otherwise, I would have thought they were stupid. But I had to understand that that guy had just scammed me, and although there may be some form of possibility to gambling arbitrage, it's very difficult to maintain your accounts. Very difficult because they don't want people making money. They're able to suspend people's accounts even though they shouldn't legally be allowed to do that. So £5,000 was lost. And the money I spent on the course with that guy. A month later, his channel was closed and I haven't heard anything from him since. He had 30,000 subscribers, and if 1 out of every 1,000 people who subscribed to him took his course, that would have been a lot of people spending £7,500. He couldn't believe it, and obviously, his idea was selling courses. I wasn't ready to give up on the dream of living in Thailand. I still had a little bit of money to keep me a while, so I started looking for more traditional things to do. And after about a month, I did find work answering incoming calls. One of the most popular things that people seem to do in Thailand. It was only paid £1,100 a month. I had to start at 4 p.m. and finish 8 hours after that. And although that did change when the clocks in England changed, so it went from 4 p.m. to 3 p.m., that 1 hour didn't really make much of a difference. I did that for 3 months and all I was doing was making just about enough money for me to live in Thailand, yet there's no chance for career progression, no chance to get on the property ladder, no chance to save for the future or retirement, and the work is absolutely mind-numbing. It was then that I had to give up on the dream of living in Thailand and I returned home. I don't consider my time to be a complete failure. I did try to move to a different country. I did try to do something that many people would never have tried to do, yet I was very stupid in the sense that I thought I was going to become a professional gambler. When I understood that that wasn't going to be the case, I did have a go at doing something more realistic. But being in Thailand wasn't enough to make up for the fact I was doing something for such a small amount of money at such a stupid time of the day. It made me feel dreadful inside, because that's not what I wanted to do in Thailand. And I think that's how I would end, by saying I wanted to live in Thailand, but I didn't want to have a normal job in Thailand, because that defeats the purpose of being there. Perhaps that's why I tried to do something so ridiculous and thought it would work. Perhaps that's why I convinced myself that I could become a professional gambler, taking advantage of arbitrage opportunities. I needed to let myself feel like that just to understand what it was like. And it was great while it lasted, but it didn't last long. So if you're thinking about moving to Thailand, whatever it is you're going to do, understand that if it's the same as what you were doing before you left, is Thailand really worth it enough to do it there as well, for less money, without any chance of progression?